Hey there, Chris Graham. We're going to talk today about a few things. We got a lot going on in the new Trump 2.0 era, and I've got some energy. I did a 5 mile run, and I'm ready to go. Ready to go. Good weather today here in Virginia, but it's going to be cold here pretty soon. In fact, we got a weather report on our website as I'm recording this that indicates that our part of Virginia may get a little snow. Not a lot, but that time of year. We go from 60 degrees and nice to snow in just a short order. All right, so let's start talking about this Trump 2.0 era. We don't know where to start, so we'll just start with Elon Musk because why not? He seems to be pestering Trump for a lot of things. The Elon Musk government efficiency experiment, let's call it that. I jumped on a conference call with actually two conference calls, one with Mark Warner and one with Tim Kaine last week, and they were talking about Elon Musk. They were being asked about him, so they kind of had to. Uh, about what they call it, Doge, government efficiency, Office of Government Efficiency, something like that. And how Musk is, wow, what an interesting role for Elon Musk, right? He knows a thing or two about slashing things. He slashed the value of Twitter to the point where it could drown in a bathtub. What a great job he's done with Twitter, right? Now the reputed genius rich guy, just keep in mind his money comes from being born rich, good timing, fleecing the government for sweetheart deal contracts and subsidies. That's how you get rich. It's just how you get rich in America. Um, it doesn't hurt being, in his case, an illegal immigrant too. Um, he's set to be in charge of this half-hearted effort on the part of the president-elect Donald Trump to reduce wasteful government spending. Like these people know anything about wasteful spending. That's their MO, you know. He could start with the billions that he gets from the government for his loony space and EV ventures. You're not going to see that happen. Of course, the big part of the reason we shouldn't expect anything serious out of what Elon's going to be heading up here. So, quoting Tim Kaine when asked about this last week, he said, "I'll say about Elon Musk, one of my beliefs is the guy doesn't necessarily have a long attention span. He may be focusing on this government efficiency plan now, and then he'll be figuring something else out next month that he wants to do. And that's probably fair. Um, he'll want to go back to Mars. At least the idea of going back to the Mars idea. He'll find something else to take over. He'll probably eventually have to leave Mar-a-Lago. But yeah, he's his mind flitters a bit. Um, it's hard to take the guy seriously. I don't disagree. Um, the bigger part of it, though, is that he's not Congress, and we do have a system in place that's been working for a couple hundred years. This is Mark Warner talking about it. The president doesn't have the arbitrary power to shut down departments. Congress has to pass that kind of legislation. Yeah, yeah. President can't just shut things down. Um, both Warner and Kaine talked about, I mean, Warner said this directly, if there's ways to bring more efficiency to government, count me in. Kaine said, I'm not threatened by the notion of anybody offering good ideas. Yeah, yeah. These guys are both former governors. They're now senators, have been for a while, but governors have to actually run things, and if somebody can tell you how to run it a little better, then go for it, right? Now, here's Warner's take on how the Trump Musk effort is doomed. Quote, in terms of numbers, are arbitrarily taking a hack to the government workforce, which will simply mean in many cases we'll just supplement that same purpose as well with contractors, ends up costing more money. That's what happens. That's what happens when you cut the government. The stuff still has to be done. You're not getting it done. You're not going to have things not get done. There's still going to be if they cut the Department of Education, there's still going to be schools. There's still going to be a need for people to set standards and enforce those standards and you know oversee things that go on in the various states. There's programs that are going on that you can't just say we're going to get rid of. Um, think about the Department of Defense. Think about every other federal government department out there. You can say we're going to cut the government employees, but you're going to end up paying more money to the private sector to do those same jobs. That's one part. Here's Kaine on that topic, and he says a lot of what I kind of just said here. No unilaterally appointed group of self-proclaimed experts is going to be able to themselves decide to shed government of federal employees. Congress has the power of the purse. Many of these agencies, Kane said, are set up by statute. And it's obvious. If you don't think there's, he says, talking about the Department of Education of abolition that's been talked about a lot on the right for many years. What's the statute? You gotta, if you're going to eliminate it, you gotta have, legislation that is signed into law that does that. What Kaine says is go ahead and file your bill to abolish the Department of Education if that's what you think, and let's see how you fare. Yeah, that's what you got to do. That's the basics. So, um, yeah, that's part of this effort here. They also talked about on their conference calls, Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard, those nominations for cabinet spots. So Elon Musk not nominated for a cabinet spot, just some ad hoc effort, basically for Trump to get Elon Musk out of his hair, um, such as he has here. Uh, with Matt Gaetz, the nomination for Attorney General will start there first. Trump may have to give up on that one. I saw a joke about this, joking about sexual assault, right? But Gates may have to pull himself out here to get out of this mess that Trump's put him in. We learned this week, gosh, what did we learn? I mean, this is Tuesday, I'm talking. We learned yesterday that Gates apparently paid women for sex. There were drug-fueled orgies with teens. I mean, this is the stuff we've been hearing about for years that now have heft behind them. Um, and we're putting this guy up to be the attorney general. I mean, this is an ultimate troll from Trump, among the many he's done in the last couple of weeks. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services. Gates now on as far as the trolls go, who's being trolled here? Gates resigned his seat in Congress, so he's all in on Attorney General, such as it is. It's probably a bad idea that he did that. 30 Senate Republicans have already come out and said that they are not going to back Gates for Attorney General. And as much as you're hearing from the Trump side that they'll just do recess appointments, that's not going to end up happening. So don't think that's going to actually be the case. Um, Warner and Kaine spoke with reporters about this last week. I mentioned that Warner's initial reaction to Gates was, "My head's spinning." And he's not. I mean, Warner's a Democrat. We heard a similar message from a lot of Republicans on this, so it's not a political thing there. Warner added later, "I don't think he understands the basic functions of this department of Gates with regard to the Justice Department." Um, what else Warner said? What I'm concerned about is that by throwing out unserious individuals for some positions, Trump is going to put such fear in the government workforce that the most talented in our workforce, the folks who've got the most experience, they just decide to hang up, retire, and leave. That's a legit fear. It's a legit fear. People are going to be frustrated and just say, whatever, maybe I've got enough time for retirement, whatever the case may be. Um, and, because the frustrating thing is, I mean, so yeah, the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland made a political decision not to go after the charges on Gates. That had to be almost entirely a political decision. Um, the House Ethics Committee, though, which is bipartisan, equal number of Democrat and Republican members, was set to release a report reportedly this week with its own investigation that was going to be damning against Gates. And he resigned his seat, so now, I mean, that's apparently him getting out of having that report released, even though now you have a lot of Republican senators and Democratic senators also saying that they would like to see that report released anyway. Um, One interesting comment from Tim Kaine about this. He thinks that the Gates nomination is a quote effort by President Trump to determine whether Senate Republicans have a gag reflex or not. He's seeing how much he can bully Senate Republicans by appointing people that privately they find completely unacceptable, but will they publicly vote against him? Interesting observation there from Kaine. Similar issue, I think, with Trump's pick to be the director of national intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democratic congresswoman from Hawaii, who decided that, okay, she went from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump. Interesting gymnastics there to get to that stage. She's come under fire from politicians on both sides of the aisle, just like Gates, but in her case, it's because she's amplified for obvious Russian misinformation for some time. It's pretty clear that if she's not in the back pocket of Russian assets, um, that she's just volunteering to be that. This is Warner now, who note now Warner until the end of the year is the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He'll go back to being the ranking Democrat, which means the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee when the Republicans take over the Senate early January. But he's going to play an important role in this. What Warner had to say, I know former Congresswoman Gabbard. There have been lots of reports about some of her ties to countries that are very unfriendly to the United States. He promised a thorough background investigation, which you would hope for all these jobs that would be the case, but especially Director of National Intelligence. Do we want a Russian asset, potential Russian asset, in that job? Probably not. Seems like it would be pretty clear we shouldn't want that. Um, Warner said, I've got a lot of questions about Ms. Gabbard, but that's why we have an advice and consent process. That's why we have these hearings. Most of it's done in public, and some of the claims of her ties to adversaries, there's got to be knowledge and explanation of that. So that's fair. Again, recess appointment, it's a threat. It's a wedge. It's a cudgel, but it's not gonna take the place here. So let's switch gears and talk about some Virginia politics things. One that I would want to talk about, the shock news from Monday. Jason Miyares, the Republican Attorney General, who I think I'm not the only one, but to say the least, assumed would be the front runner for the Republican nomination to run for governor in 2025 in Virginia, deciding to stay and run for a second term as Attorney General, which leaves the door wide open for the Lieutenant Governor, who's also a Republican, Winsome Earle-Sears, to be the heir apparent to Glenn Youngkin. Virginia, your governor can only run for one term. You can run for a second term, but you have to wait 4 years in between. I hate the system. Have talked about this, written about this for 30 years. So we need to, update the times there, even just for, continuity of policy. Let's let a governor run. I'm not saying let him run forever, but 8 years instead of four. I think we would be better served if we let a governor have a chance to see some policies through. Um, Even if it risks, I mean, here in this case, Glenn Youngkin, who knows? He might get reelected, but I think we'd be better off if we went that direction. But we don't. We don't. We probably never will. I've talked about this with legislators for years. It's likely not going to happen. A lot would have to change. I remember talking about this with a Republican legislator, Steve Landis, on this years ago. The point he made is that the Virginia Constitution gives the governor so many powers outside of the General Assembly, which only meets 45 days one year, 60 days the other year. The governor is the governor for 365 days. The governor has a lot of powers of appointment and powers of policy setting that maybe other governors don't have. We'd have to really change a lot to get, just to have not to give the governor too much power for 8 years. We could do some simple things like let the General Assembly meet more frequently. But I mean, it's not as quick a fix or an easy a fix as it could seem to some people. But that said, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth us taking another look at that at some point. That all said, we don't do that. Okay, getting back to where we are. Jason Miyares, the Attorney General. I mean, the Attorney General actually does something in Virginia. The Attorney General runs an office. The Attorney General files lawsuits. The Attorney General defends the Commonwealth. Lieutenant Governor of Virginia does nothing. Our Lieutenant Governor is one of the weakest statewide offices in the country. Um, it's only a part-time job in the first place. The main role is the ceremonial role being president of the state Senate when it's in session for 105 days every 2 years. There's a couple other committees that the lieutenant governor serves on, but it's not even much of a glorified job. It's there. Who knows why it's there? It's just there. Um, but Winsome Earle-Sears had already put her name out there for the Republican nomination back a few months ago. I remember Jason Miyares was actually critical of her doing so. She did so back late summer. Comes to mind it was late summer when she did this. And he was critical, saying we're starting 2025 a little too soon. We're still in the middle of 2024. But I'm wondering now if Miyares is just being smart politically here. He could be risking it, in one sense by running for attorney general. It's a down ticket race, but he does have name recognition. Uh, the smart part of this being the Virginia has a tradition dating back to 19. I think the last time we elected a governor of the same party as the sitting president, is a complicated way to say that, was 1973. Mills Godwin, as a Republican governor, a year after Richard Nixon was reelected, Republican was reelected as president. Ever since, I mean, we're talking 50 plus years now. We've gone with the governor candidate of the opposite party as the president, and I mean, there's reasons why it's not just a happenstance. I mean, we have the job of presidency is a tough one. The first year is the toughest year of the four. We have this phenomenon at the federal level, a 2 year cycle, the midterms, the second year elections in the 4 years for the president. The president's party loses seats in the House, loses seats in the Senate. I mean, we can already look ahead and see that, likely Donald Trump, who now he's going to start January 20th with a Republican House, Republican Senate. He's not going to have either in 2020 after the 2026 cycle. It's just not going to be the case. The margins that he's going to have as working margins for the next 2 years are pretty small. And Republicans have 20 seats to defend in the Senate out of the 33 that are up that year. They're going to, they have a 6 seat advantage, but only three have to change to go to a tie of four to give Democrats control. That seems pretty doable. It's going to be a, 8 to 10 working margin in the House. That's very doable. It wouldn't be a surprise to see Democrats win 35 or 45 seats and make up 35 or 45 seats in the House in 2026. So, and that's a 2 year cycle. The one we have our governor election the year after the presidential election. And so all the challenges that a new president has, that's the first chance that voters have to, weigh in on the progress of that new administration. And it just always works out in Virginia that we vote the other way. So Miyares could be reading those tea leaves and saying, I'd kind of like to not lose. Wait until 2028 and we'll see how that goes. At 2028/2029 and see how that goes. And let Winsome Earle-Sears go one-on-one with Abigail Spanberger. So what Republicans are doing here then is, they're not going to have a race, a battle for the nomination between a sitting lieutenant governor, sitting attorney general. They're not going to spend millions knocking each other down a few pegs and then emerge. Whoever emerges has to go against Abigail Spanberger. Democrats had already settled their situation for the top of their ticket. Abigail Spanberger announced first soon to be former congresswoman from the 7th district didn't run for re-election this year. She's focusing on governor for next year. Um, LeVar Stoney, the Richmond mayor, was in the gubernatorial race on the Democratic side for a few months, decided to refocus his efforts on lieutenant governor. So Democrats already have a candidate. Now Republicans have a candidate. Hey, we're going to have our first female governor. I mean, unless someone emerges on either side, more likely to be on the Republican side, but I don't see that happening on either side, really, especially Republican side. So we're going to have our first female governor after the 2025 cycle. Hey, only took us a while. Um, but yeah, I think Miyares is just kind of waiting things out. I mean, the gamble here is, a lot of voters vote straight ticket. We've had obvious examples in relatively recent years where a Republican has won when Democrats are sweeping, the other seats. I don't think we've had necessarily the opposite. When Republicans win, we tend to have a three person sweep. I'm trying to think. It was in 2001, Mark Warner won governor, Tim Kaine won lieutenant governor, and Mark Early won attorney general. I believe that's the case. I could be wrong on that. I got pretty good memory, but I'm just doing this from memory. But I mean, so the idea that we have the down ticket races tend to fall in line with the governor's race could be a risk there for Miyares. He's gambling on, hey, I'm the sitting guy, I'll run for attorney general again. and win, even if Winsome Earle-Sears loses at the top of the ticket, and then he would be in place in 2029 to run as governor. That could be risky. It could be very risky as far as that goes. Some more Virginia. This is already announcing for 2026 in a race it's hard for Democrats to win. Ken Mitchell ran in the 2024 cycle, which 2 weeks ago, um, only got 34.6% of the vote in the very red 6th district, which is the district I'm based in. Goes from the Winchester area down to the Roanoke-Salem area, down the 81 corridor. A lot of green grass. Green grass doesn't vote Democrat. Um, but Mitchell, gosh, he is a candidate that I think could do well in his district if he could just get some support from the national Democrats and state, even the Richmond Democrats. I don't know that they'll ever care, but you got to invest your money the way you think is wisest, I suppose. But Mitchell is, man, he's retired military, he's a businessman, he's a farmer. And he also, he says all the right things for Democrats on women's reproductive health issues and DEI issues. And so he's a guy, he's a real guy. He's a guy who's the kind of guy who can run well out here. Just 34.6%. He didn't get hardly any money from the statewide and national Dems. I mean, they're not going to invest a lot of money in this seat. The hope I always hold out is the 2008. It was one cycle in the last close to 30 years now where a Democrat ran well in this part of Virginia. The 5th district, which runs parallel to the 6th. The 6th goes down the 81, corridor. The 5th runs down the 29 corridor that goes all the way from Albemarle County down to North Carolina. Tom Perriello upset Virgil Goode that year. He only won the one term. He lost his reelection, close reelection. And Democrats over in the 5th have run better. Over here, we're lucky in the 6th to get, a candidate to get to 40%. They tend to run over there in the 40 to 45% range, but still it's a uphill battle. But Perriello won one time. It's possible, right? That's what I keep saying. It's possible. But Ken Mitchell again, he's the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy can do it. And so, I want to see him have another. I want to see him have a good chance. I want to see some support out there for him, and maybe announcing this early will help. He's coming off the momentum of he's made a lot of contacts up and down the valley. It's a something to build on here. So we'll hope that ends up being the case for him. His opponent in the 2024 cycle, the incumbent there. Uh, Ben Klein. Klein is a guy who follows in the footsteps of his mentor, Bob Goodlatte. When I say mentor, but Ben Klein served as a legislative assistant to Goodlatte, who represented the 6th district from 1992 to 2018, so 13 terms. Goodlatte didn't raise a ruckus. He's the opposite of a Marjorie Taylor Greene or the type like that is on the tips of the tongues of everybody in the country, despite being just a congressperson from one district. Goodlatte kind of sat in the back, didn't, raise a lot of issues, didn't offend anybody, which is probably important, and kept winning, kept rolling. His first election, he, got somewhere like 57, 58% of the vote, and then it was never close after that. Ben Klein, similar, his first election in 2018 when he ran the first time after Goodlatte had stepped down. He was in the 57, 58% range, and he's Klein's going to probably be in that same situation. Now, Klein, unlike Goodlatte, who sat in the back of Congress and didn't really have much to say, Klein has been doing that for a while, but he actually tried to put himself into a leadership position, Republican Study Committee. That's a group of 150 or so Republicans in the House Republican Caucus that does MAGA stuff, I guess. Uh, Klein has been the leader of the Republican Study Committee's Budget Committee the last couple of years. He ran for the chairmanship of this Republican Study Committee and came up short. Lost 80 to 57 to a guy named August Pfluger a Texas Republican who'd been heading up the energy task force within the RSC. And so Klein, he's trying to do some stuff, came up short. Um, don't forget though that Klein, his budget committee within the Republican Study Committee came up with a plan last year to raise the retirement age, to slash Social Security spending by 1.5 trillion, to slash Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, Affordable Care Act, marketplace subsidies by 4.5 trillion. And now they got Trump saying that he wants to get rid of Obamacare, among other things. So Klein lost this battle, but he'll probably win that war. Unfortunately for a lot of the white folks who were seniors, in particular, right, who voted for him, they're going to lose. A lot of them are going to lose some Social Security benefits. A lot of the white under 50,000 household income people are going to lose access to Medicaid, CHIP, and the Affordable Care Act. You get what you vote for as far as that goes, and life goes on. Um, More Virginia, and this has a tie as well, maybe to the federal. I talked earlier about Glenn Youngkin and how he can't run for re-election. Poor guy. As soon as you're elected in Virginia as governor, you're already the lame duck. And in his case, it's even tougher. I mean, just like it was for Terry McAuliffe and for Ralph Northam, his Democratic predecessors, there are two popular U.S. senators. Both of them are Democrats, but they're also popular. Tim Kaine just won re-election this year by a pretty safe margin. Uh, Mark Warner's up for re-election in 2026. So if you're a governor, the next thing you can do, theoretically, right, is either run for Senate or run for president. Well, we just elected a president. We have two popular Democratic U.S. senators, and so Glenn Youngkin, I think he's got to be angling for something in the Trump administration. There's Trump though is the problem for Youngkin is he's not a Fox News host, so he's not going to get anything there. So he's just kind of flailing around right now. Don't feel too sorry for him. His net worth's over $400 million. He had his office put out a press release today touting the 247,000 new jobs created under his watch since he took office in 2022. Now, he didn't give any credit to probably where it was due. Joe Biden, congressional Democrats, the Inflation Reduction Act, Republicans didn't vote for this thing. They tried everything they could to prevent it from happening, and they've been putting out their own press releases bragging about all the jobs they created, even though they didn't vote for the jobs. And this is the case a lot in Virginia too. Not only, Inflation Reduction Act, but a third of Virginia its economy is the federal government. I mean, our adjacency to the federal government. And Northern Virginia, uh, being a huge federal government, not only the direct government employees, but government contractors who locate in Northern Virginia. Um, we're talking about close to 700,000 people in our economy that work in the federal government that live in Virginia. Now the good news is, yeah, we've created 247,000 new jobs since Glenn Youngkin took office. We'll thank the Democrats for that, but Glenn Youngkin wants to take credit for it. The bad news is, if the guy that Youngkin endorsed for president, Donald Trump, gets his way, um, hmm, those jobs are at risk. Trump, the effort I talked about earlier, the thing by Elon Musk, where they want to cut the government. If you cut the government, you're cutting jobs. I mean, that's the only thing you can do. The biggest amount of money spent by any organization is going to be your employees, and that's certainly the case with the federal government. So, the 300,000 Virginia residents who work directly for the federal government, the additional close to 400,000 who work for government contractors, it might not be so good for them. No, Youngkin, for his part's clues to all this. He had his office put out a press release touting the 2.9% unemployment rate. Nothing was said there about, well, we could lose a lot of jobs here. Remember a couple weeks ago, Youngkin, it was actually last week, he put out a statement saying, the great thing about the Commonwealth of Virginia is that we have nearly 300,000 jobs unfilled. So, hey, we can absorb some of those people through those other jobs. A lot of those jobs, unfortunately, are, I mean, folding sweaters at Old Navy, making sandwiches at Subway. If you're a government employee or a government contractor, probably a little bit below the pay grade there. But um, That's the case with how Republicans like to fill up those jobs. Hey, speaking of silly things said by Republicans, this is more of a sports thing, but I'll go ahead and get into it here because it's got politics in it. I wrote a column today. Why don't we tell white athletes to shut up and dribble? You know this already, though. Um, the question I asked was, why do liberals have our undergarments in a bunch over Nick Bosa's MAGA hat and Christian Pulisic's Donald Trump dance? And the answer is that shut up and dribble. That was the comment from Megyn Kelly, the very privileged white blonde who has made a career of talking, uh, despite not having a lot of talent at that. She used that comment in 2018. She was denigrating LeBron James when he was still with the Cleveland Cavaliers because LeBron used his position as being LeBron to talk about politics. Then there's the whole Colin Kaepernick saga. LeBron is still in the NBA at the age of 39 playing pretty well. He's won a couple more gold medals since Megyn Kelly told him to shut up and dribble. Colin Kaepernick never got to go back to the NFL. He lost his job because he kneeled, took a knee during the national anthem during before NFL games, and he was protesting violence against blacks. Now, Nick Bosa wearing a MAGA hat gets a little fine from the NFL. Christian Pulisic, you don't know who he is, most certainly. He's the star player on the U.S. men's national soccer team, which never does anything. He did a Trump dance after scoring a goal in a friendly yesterday. They don't, never anything is said like Donald Trump said about Colin Kaepernick a few years ago. The quote from Trump from that was, "Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners when somebody disrespects our flag to say, 'Get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired, he's fired.'" All right, so it's okay to wear your MAGA hat and photobomb a interview after a game and then not take any questions in the post-game press conference about it. Or if you're Christian Pulisic, what was it he said? Obviously, that's the Trump dance, he said after, he was asked to explain. But it was just a dance that everybody's doing. He's the one who created it, and I thought it was funny. Imagine Colin Kaepernick saying, "Oh yeah, taking a knee. I just thought it was funny." The politics thing here, right? Um, hmm, it is what it is. He won't get fired. He won't have to set up tryouts to, get a job in the MLS, another job in MLS or some, the USL or uh, some third or fourth or fifth tier league. Pulisic will be fine. Nick Bosa will be fine. LeBron James is fine. Colin Kaepernick is long past his prime, and that's just where we are in this country. Last thoughts here. I get emails frequently from readers. Sometimes they end up in print. Just put it that way. Call it the mailbag. A manga reader used the term woke and then hints that Jesus would not have liked it. So let me read the email. And I'm gonna read it. I guess I should edit it if I want this to be on YouTube. So I'll be careful here. The reader, whose name is Jack Cawthorn, wrote to say, "Just wanted to touch base with you regarding the coming consequences of November 5th. Finally, all this BS the lunatic left has been propagating on the citizens of this great nation is being called into question and highlighted in spite of gaslighting people like yourself have subjected rational people to. You may want to be honest with yourself and report issues without the prejudice and dishonesty of the liberal media is so good at. People are smarter than you think. The woke agenda y'all support and defend is not the American way. And on a personal note, I'd encourage and pray you get to know and understand Jesus and the mindset he has laid out for his people to thrive in this life and the life to come when we leave this existence." Again, this is a guy named Jack Cawthorn. And my response, and I'm sharing it here, the low income white MAGA folks who voted for Donald Trump will be the ones who feel the consequences. They'll be the ones who lose their health insurance when he follows through on his promise to end Obamacare. And they'll be the ones who will feel the pinch of higher prices when he follows through on his silly promise to jack up tariffs. As for my reporting, I'm going to continue to be honest with myself and report the truth, which is something that you may want to become better acquainted with. The woke agenda that you can't even define is about making sure that everyone has an equal shot at being the best people they can be. And we all win when everybody can be the best person they can be. You seem to want just God-fearing white folks like yourself to be the best people they can be. That's what MAGA is all about, right? The sooner you, I'm talking to Jack Cawthorn here, but anybody else out there that needs this, go for it. You need to come to a reckoning that the Jesus you think you worship wasn't a white guy, because he wasn't. Jesus wasn't a white guy. He wasn't white European. He was a Middle Eastern Jew with brown hair, brown eyes, and brown skin. Think Iraqi. Think Palestinian. That you would deport to a S-hole country if he were to come back. If you can do that, we'll all be better off. Until then, you can kiss my arse. You know, this is the thing that frustrates me. Talking not just to people like Jack Cawthorn on the far MAGA right, but even talking to my friends on the left. The people on the far right can say whatever they want to say, and if you say anything back, they get offended. The people on the left say, Chris, why do you do these? Why do you write back to people with this kind of harsh language? Are you going to win them over this way? Donald Trump says harsh things to them and wins them over. I think honesty is the best policy, if you ask me. I've been writing a lot the last 2 weeks about how let's just say it what it is. When you look at the exit poll numbers, this election was won for Donald Trump by white voters in general, white male voters getting a little deeper down, white voters without college degrees, white voters who make under 50,000 a year, uh, folks who are going to be affected the most voted for Donald Trump. They're going to be affected when Obamacare is taken away. And you're going to see tens of millions of people who only have health insurance because of the marketplace created by the Affordable Care Act go off the rolls. I'm someone who, I'm doing great now financially, but as of just a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, could not afford health insurance. I own a small company. Uh, it's grown, in the last 5 or 6 years, but we could not afford health insurance, just my wife and I, for ourselves because it was hard to get into a pool and do anything with it. And that was 6, 7 years into Obamacare. Our financial situation's improved and also the marketplace has improved. And we're going to be fine now, no matter what happens with Donald Trump and Republicans wanting to get rid of Obamacare without a replacement for it, with concepts of a plan. But there are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to be in a great place, and a lot of those folks are going to be people who voted for Donald Trump. Um, Funny thing is, the people who are going to fight for those people are going to be people like me, who are going to say, look, you didn't vote for us, but, somebody needs to look out for you, and it's not going to be the people you voted for. I don't know if Jack Cawthorn is going to fit into this realm or not, if he's going to be one of those folks or not, but, you know, I think it's important that we do stand up for folks. As far as, this is where it gets difficult. I mean, if there's anything that I think Democrats do wrong, I'm not going to say, gosh, we look our noses down, because I look our noses down at people because I don't. Um, it's hard for me to look my nose down at anybody. I was born to teen parents, grew up in poverty, grew up in a trailer park, uh, lived a lot of my life in it. I didn't live in my first house until I was 35 years old. And that was a house that I was renting. I didn't own my first house until I was 39. I'm 53. So the bulk of my life was spent either in trailer parks or apartments or, you know, situations where you had to count every penny, uh, you know, to make ends meet. And that's never going to go away from me. I grew up eating ketchup sandwiches for dinner a lot of nights because we had bread and we had ketchup. You didn't always have something to go on the bread other than the ketchup. I still have a hankering for it sometimes, more times than I'd like to admit. There are times I miss living in a 12 by 60 trailer. I live in a 3,500 square foot house now. I miss a 720 square foot trailer that, literally, you could almost touch both ends, it felt like. when you stood in the middle. You know, so that's I'm not the only Democrat who comes from humble background like that. Um, there are plenty of folks on both sides, and plenty of Democrats certainly who've never known struggle, and when they're trying to reach out and help, that's that they're trying to reach out and help. They don't really understand what they're doing, but they want to help, and I think anybody who wants to help should be welcome in to help. But I can understand some of the folks I grew up with, lived with for the first 39 years of my life, saying, you're looking down your nose at us. We don't need your help. I can understand that. Uh, I grew up, it was, where I lived in Augusta County, north of Waynesboro, my little town, unorganized, unincorporated town called Cremora, Virginia. We were a lot of us lived in trailer parks. And those of us who didn't, there were a lot of, lower income housing. I mean, a lot of us, I mean, there were a couple subdivisions on the other side of Cremora that where the kids were a little better off, but the bulk of us, our elementary school, which is long since closed, I think it closed 35 years ago, or more. Um, you know, two-thirds of us, of the 300 or so kids in that school, were the poor kids, working class kids, and then the next school over was it's the name of it's UK Castle. Now those kids all go to school together. I'd love to know the dynamic now. I really would of how the Kimura kids, they've been going to that community's been going to that school now for 35 years. Probably no, there may not be a dynamic. I know when we were going to school, there was a dynamic whenever we played Little League baseball against each other. We wanted to beat the kids from the suburban, upper middle class school. That's the UK Castle kids. Then they were the rich kids as far as we were concerned. They were the kids who uh they lived in nice houses and we lived in trailers, and we wanted to beat the socks off of them on the baseball field, and we did enough. We did enough to do that. We were pretty good. But and then going to high school with those kids, I was of my seventh grade elementary school class going into eighth grade. Then in high school, we didn't have middle school back in that day and age. Unfortunately, there weren't too many kids from my seventh grade class who went into the college track classes. So it was weird for me because, here I was. I mean, it ended up being my high school class is salutatorian. Um, so good student, right? But all my classmates were those kids who were from those upper middle class homes. And I felt it, man. I felt the, I felt being poor. That's the first time in my life. When I was a kid, just with the other poor kids, none of us felt poor. But when I went to high school, I definitely felt the class struggle. Um, and so, I identify with folks who are from working class backgrounds who don't like being talked down to because, man, I lived that every day of my life. Bro, those 5 years of high school, I think college, when I went to school at the University of Virginia, I was the poor kid. That was even more pronounced. All my roommates in first year at UVA were from Richmond and Northern Virginia and New York. I mean, man, I was, I was a sore thumb, man, sticking out. And so, yeah, I can identify with that. Um, I can identify with that feeling. But here is why, 40 years later, 30 years later, at the age of 52, I am still of the mindset that the way that liberals and Democrats see the world is the way to go. Um, the only thing I got wrong, problem with Obamacare is that it didn't go far enough. Let's go with universal health care. I had a aunt and uncle who had I've told this story before, probably recently, who had a kid who was in a bad car wreck and suffered serious head injuries, and it caused permanent damage. And the father, my uncle, had good health insurance. He worked for the city of Stanton. He had great health insurance. It still bankrupted them. And, we're the only industrialized country in the world where uh, a car accident leading to health issues can bankrupt you. The others that have universal health care, that's not something you have to think about. Um, we should not have to think about that. Healthcare should be equal to all. And I don't know why we settle for less than what we settle for. It would make us all better off, and it would make us better people because, we wouldn't have to worry about. I mean, I've got a buddy sitting in a hospital right now, waiting for a heart transplant. Gets calls. He's sitting in the hospital getting calls about his payments being delayed. The dude is it's life or death, and they're still hounding him. That's not right, and so from that extreme to the probably the extreme of my aunt and uncle and cousin to just a matter of not having to worry about whether or not if you go to the doctor or have an ambulance ride, it's going to maybe throw you out of commission for a while financially. It can make you so that you can be more productive. It can make companies more productive. It's not just doing the right thing. It should be enough to do the right thing, but it shouldn't, it's not just enough to do the right thing there. It also makes us more productive, makes us more economically competitive. I would say the same for the Green New Deal. Again, it should be the right thing to do. We should want to do what we can to preserve life, not just for our kids and grandkids, but for future generations beyond them, the ability to live life that we get to live now environmentally, but it's also good business. Those jobs, if we can, we know our world needs to get beyond oil and gas, fossil fuels. Not saying that you completely replace it tomorrow, later today, next week, but if we can actually, if we're going to put subsidies to things anyway, let's put subsidies in the direction of, all right, let's develop the new technologies. Let's then be the leader in implementing those Let's build the stuff, sell it to the world. These are jobs. These are jobs we can have. These are jobs our kids can have, their kids can have. You know, it should be enough. It should be enough that it's the right thing to do environmentally. But if we can't sell that, let's sell the idea that it's good jobs. These are smart jobs. These are jobs that can put a roof over your head, that can put clothes on your family, that can put them in school. I mean, these are, food on your table. It should be enough that it's the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do economically. I look at what is dismissed as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's dismissed because, gosh, the white MAGA folks who don't like the woke, like the guy I talked about here earlier. Uh, oh yeah, they don't want. I mean, honestly, that guy doesn't want black folks, Latinos, women, LGBTQ pluses to be better off because he thinks that makes him worse off. It's not a zero-sum game. I'm an example of that. You know, the middle class, upper middle class kids that I hated when I was growing up probably still hate in some respect. No offense to them individually, just I live now in a nice home and I still wonder if I even respect myself sometimes because I'm the kind of person now that I would have hated when I was a kid just because they have an advantage, even though I had to create the advantage for myself. Um, but a lot of these folks think that voted for Trump think that if someone else is doing better off, that means it comes at my expense. I don't look at it that way. I look at because I was able to take advantage of education, which was the great equalizer for me, uh, and make my life better. It's helped make my wife's life better. We have employees that we created something, a business that now as employees, we make their lives better. One of our employees recently bought a home, her first home that she owns. Um, so me getting out of the trailer park, in a way of speaking, has helped make other people's lives better. I think the same thing is possible for if we can elevate um, Black folks, if we can elevate Latino folks, LGBTQ plus folks, women. I mean, name the subgroup. If we can elevate everybody, they can be the best people they can be. And if they're the best people they can be, they're probably the most productive people they can be. If they're the most productive people they can be, that makes our economy better, and it makes us all better. And so this isn't pie in the sky or Pollyanna view. This is I live this, because I was able to do something. I think we should all have that ability to do that. Um, and so, if I want to say anything to Democrats, it would be to let's be a little less preachy, or because I don't know that we mean to be preachy, but those of us who need to tone down the message as far as that goes, it's not just about doing the right thing. It should be, but it's not just about doing the right thing. It's not, you shouldn't, it should be letting black folks, Latinos, women, LGBTQ plus, I mean, everybody else, letting everybody be the best people they can be because they can be who they can be and be who they are. It should be enough that we just want them to be, the best people they can be. But it also is about making us all better. And if they can be better people, we can all be better as a result of them being better. If we can be smart about investing in the green economy, that can give us something completely new in terms of what we can make money doing. If we can figure out a way to let ourselves do universal health care, that can make us all better off. I know that there's politics to this. There don't have to be. I think these things, if you break it down, can appeal to the people I grew up with in the trailer park, and their kids and grandkids. Um, it's just a matter of taking the veneer off a little bit there, and also relaxing a little bit. Let's not be so rigid on how we say things, and worrying about offending people. I don't go out of your way to offend people, but man, oh man, it does. It gets a little much. It gets a little much. And that's, the people ask me, how do you write these emails back to people? And you're very forceful when you write them back. You know, I think some of the folks respect it because, if they don't, they need to. Um, but don't let anybody bully you, but speak to people on their level, I guess would be a response there. So in any case, hey, I've talked a lot here today. Um, Feel free to if you have any comments, questions, story tips, drop me a line. You can go to augustafreepress.com and read all the stuff that we write on a regular basis. But also, if you want me to hear from you, email me at chris@augustafreepress.com. And man, oh man, looking forward to not snow here in a couple of days in Virginia. It's getting ready to be Thanksgiving. Looking forward to some turkey. There's a lot of good basketball coming up. I'll do a sports podcast here in the next day or two. We'll get you ready for UVA basketball playing in the Bahamas. Wish I was there. UVA football with two chances to get into a bowl this weekend. SMU will get you ready for that. So, any case, hey, it's been good talking. Thank you so much for your time. And again, love to hear from you. Chris at AugustaFreePress.com.